Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show tonight, number 151. Here we are, the 3rd of, we're halfway through this year. It's the 3rd of June already.
Wow.
June has broken. Unbelievable. All the way through this far already. Casey, the music's still going. How come?
I was fading it out as you did the intro.
Lee Moon's jamming. Yeah.
Lee Moon is jamming. Thank you, Lee Moon.
Exactly. Introducing to you, Mr. Casey Green from the DC area. How are you today, sir?
Doing pretty well. I need to check and see if I have a software update inbound. Other people do.
Yes, indeed. That'll be another update from Casey's video, I'm sure.
It will be.
Also joining us, Mr. Patrick Connor from Oregon. How are you today, sir?
Hello, I'm good. And yeah, I did get that software update. So yeah, I just started the install before the show here. So it'll be there as soon as we're done. Yeah. So hello, Tesla Life viewers. We are helping to bring in the future that is free from fossil fuels.
Let us know down below if your car is lying to you and saying it's up to date, or if it's doing like Patrick's and saying, "Hey, update ready," or if it's doing like some other people and you've already got the update. Let us know.
Yeah. What version are you running?
Yeah. It's funny you guys mentioned that. I was out just driving in the car just recently, 2 days ago, and I noticed, and I wanted to mention to you guys, is the volume seems to change on its own a little bit. So if you get up towards the high end of the volume, so say you're, maybe 3 clicks from the top, you're pressing the stereo that much, and then I let go, I drive a little bit further, and I go back to spin the knob up a notch, and I notice it's already dropped down 2. So I have to go up 3 to get to that extra point. But if I go all the way to the top, number 11, if you will, if you go all the way to the top, then it stayed at that volume. But I noticed it kicked down on its own a couple times at that upper end. I've never had that happen before.
I thought it was just me.
I wonder if just driving you bump the knob or something. Or do you think it's just a software bug?
No, it's definitely.
I'm not bumping the knobs.
It's
you guys
not
are sure?
the knob moving. I am definitely sure of that. But because I was kind of surprised, I said I didn't move that, so I tried it again and again and again, and sure enough, every time it had that step down position after I let go of the knob. So we'll have to see.
I've had sound problems for about 4 months with my phone, so I'm Bluetooth paired. And I'm listening to podcasts on my phone. And then for whatever reason, like when the car makes some chime, the volume on my phone drops to 25%. I'm like, why is my phone volume?
I have that happen too. It controls my phone volume. And so sometimes I want to turn down the speech and I get out of the car and the volume is still down on the phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pain. I found a little app for Android that'll crank the volume up all the way when you're connected to certain Bluetooth items, and so I have it doing that, and then I can control the volume with the car instead of on the phone. Or like normal headphones, when you turn the volume up or down, it changes the phone's volume. But the Tesla, it's not. The phone volume and the car volume are independent, and one of them, if either one of them are at 0, you get no sound, and it's quite the pain. So hopefully they fix this.
I can't quite. It's been doing it for a couple versions. I can't quite figure out when it wants to treat my phone like it's a headphone, or the car like it's a headphone for the phone. I know the times where it's like, oh yeah, you do your thing and I'll do my thing over here.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. Glad I mentioned it. We'll see if we get others. If you are having an issue, let us know in the comments. I'd like to hear about it as well. But let's get to the news. The news never stops. This week, of course, we had that scrubbed SpaceX launch, which later turned into a successful one, which we'll get to. But after the scrub one on Wednesday night, apparently a local supercharger, some people were in line to get the supercharge as normal. And guess who shows up? But Mr. Musk and his entourage show up because they needed to supercharge. And Elon waited in queue with everyone else and eventually got a spot. And most people didn't notice it was him until he actually got out of the car. And of course, he had some security agents with him. So that looked pretty obvious as well, with a couple of guys dressed in three-piece suits, just kind of standing around, keeping an eye on the crowd. But Elon talked to everyone there that wanted to talk. They went through actually a few different topics. He took some selfie pictures and then told the crowd that he had to go grab something to eat, headed into the local Five Guys and grabbed some burgers for he and his entourage, and they were off. So kind of cool if you were there to have Elon show up while you were getting a Supercharge on a Wednesday night.
Absolutely. Yeah, although I have to admit, if I were a billionaire, I'd have my own private charging network.
You'd have that transport truck with the flak deck just following you around with all those 8 Superchargers on them, just ready to use at any point, right?
Yeah, that's fuel efficient. Yeah.
Well, if it's one of the semi prototypes,
Oh yeah.
you can charge them all with it.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's cool that he didn't say, "Hey, this one's my dedicated one. You guys just can't use it," or cut in line, or there was none of that BS.
Is your name on this sign?
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool.
Or just pull up and place a sign over the existing sign that says Elon spot.
Yeah. Or do like they do with the semis and have a scout go ahead and block out some spaces.
Exactly. Well, beyond that, of course, what was announced here recently this week was that the annual shareholders meeting is going to take place this time on July the 11th. And it's going to be held in the same spot in Mountain View, California, at the Computer Museum, I believe it is. It's a spot they've used twice previously. And what's cool about this shareholders meeting, of course, if you are a shareholder, even if you only have one share, you're allowed to register to attend. You're allowed to be on site. And what's really cool is that the last 2 years in a row, they've brought a number of the cars to the actual site. So they've set up the Roadster 2. They've brought the Semi previously, and of course an S or an X, a Y maybe this time, the 3. But if you're in the area of Mountain View, California, you might want to drop by. You don't even need to have a share to see the display that they have going on. But if you have a share, you can be admitted to the meeting as well. So
Cybertruck. This might be your chance to see the Cybertruck.
Wouldn't that be interesting? They had it just parked outside.
Maybe.
But it's possible. We don't know for sure. But the past 2 years, they have brought prototype cars. So it certainly would be interesting. I know that there's going to be a ton of people there, and we, of course, will share photos and information that we get from the display. Again, July 7th is when this is going to take place this year.
Yeah, I always like
watching to vote
those.
if you're a shareholder.
Right. Yeah, definitely vote. And they count all the votes they've gotten ahead of time. They collect some votes in the room, but they're able to quickly go through the business things that they have to do at a shareholder meeting, and then get to the cool part where it's Q&A, and Musk is always entertaining.
So what do we think PETA is going to ask for this year, aside from a vegan steering wheel on Model 3?
I know. They're going to ask that the vegan steering wheel with heat. They need that. That's the one that's still leather in all cars. The one that has a heater in it.
I did misspeak. The vegan leather is on the SNX. The reason the Model 3 and the Model Y don't have heat on their seat is because, as of last year's shareholder meeting, they couldn't figure out how to get the heat in the vegan leather steering wheel without destroying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So leather all the way if you got heat.
But
I don't know.
that's the only part.
Maybe they won't even show up, Casey. Is that possible? Maybe PETA won't even show up. Although they've been a fixture for the past 4 years or 5 years, right?
More than that.
Yeah.
They've been there since I first started watching in 2012, and they've been there since
every year.
Every year.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not enough that Tesla's advancing battery technology and self-driving technology. They also have to advance vegan leather technology.
Well, they always start that way. They're like, hey, great work, and thank you for addressing the stuff last time, and then here's this year's demand.
Yeah.
See how long it takes you.
That's good.
Yeah.
You've always got to have something new to deliver. So
That's right. Always have that want list with one more item, just to make sure it's just not quite complete yet.
right,
Absolutely.
if people aren't asking for things, then nobody cares about your product. So this is a good thing.
Exactly. Also making the news, of course, is some official business from Tesla, is the Elon unlocking his first stage of compensation for his recent contract package. And this, of course, added up to near $800 million worth of shares. Patrick, could you maybe speak to what's involved in a share deal like this? Do you have any idea?
So my understanding is that there are stock options at I think it was $350 strike price. I don't remember the exact number, and it was based on having a sustained market cap over a certain threshold and revenue over a certain threshold. And so both of those have been met. So that was the criteria for this tranche, and so Musk has been given these stock options. Although the dollar value is almost irrelevant because they're locked up for 5 years. He has to own them for a significant amount of time before they're vested. And one of the ways that he maintains control of the company the way he does is by having a significant amount of shares that gives him voting power and other things on the board. And so it's not like he's going to go cash them out anyway. Typically, what he does is borrow against those shares. So the headlines are certainly not the full story. Is all what I'd like to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and from what I understand, he has to purchase the share at a lower rate. That's agreed to, right? Like he has to purchase it like 352 or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's the strike price, and
so really, and he has to hold on to it for that period of time, that 5 years. I also understand that his value in the company, how much he actually owned stock-wise, with this latest deal, pushed him into just over the 20%. He was at 18.8% or something along that lines, and this pushed it up a 1.3% or something to get him over that 20. So he's actually, with this deal, he's gaining a little bit more of ownership of the company based on number of shares available.
Right. Yeah, and yeah. So typically when you have something like that, if you do want to exercise those options, there's sell to buy where so if you're getting if the strike price is let's just say 300 and the current price is 900, then you would sell one at 900 to buy 3 others, and so you end up selling some of them when you convert them, but only enough to then pay for the other ones that you're holding. If you have a bunch of cash, you could just buy them, but most people don't have the money to do that. They end up selling options to hold them.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Elon has even stated in a number of interviews that he definitely does borrow on the shares. So if he needs capital for whatever reason, he's just basically taking out a loan based on the shares that he has as collateral, I guess.
And he'll usually, when he gets his payouts in shares, he'll sell some to pay the taxes on what he just received.
Right. Yep. And you have to think about most CEOs are getting paid tens of millions of dollars a year in addition to this. And Musk is getting minimum wage because California required it. Otherwise, he would have been taking $1 a year.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's that, and that's one reason he borrows against it, because when he wants to buy a house or a car or whatever, this is what he gets in this form of payment. So he borrows against it to get money instead of just having $50 million a year salary.
Right. And I don't know if you two must remember back in 2018 when this compensation package was signed. It seemed like quite a mountain to climb at that particular point in time.
It sure did.
Tesla had not started to ramp up the Model 3 in volume even at that point, and this was quite a mountain in front of him. But again, it's a testament to his leadership, and it's a testament to where Tesla has been and now is. That this plateau has been reached already. Here we are, just basically a year and a bit after that point, and they've reached that first plateau. So that's amazing, really, how far the company has come.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, next story Patrick's got for us. Submitted. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, so this is from Brad Berman on Electric, and it is a study that was published from the Environmental Defense of Ontario Public Health. And I really like this because when electric cars out on the road, we talk about a lot of the benefits, like how they're sporty and fast and fun, and not a lot of the fueling price is low. But what this is looking at is what are the health and community benefits around you by not polluting. And the study, the headline is that every electric car brings $10,000 in life savings benefits. So they're looking at the number of deaths that occur, the asthma rates, the other health problems from poor air quality. And this is one of the things when we were trying to get in Oregon a state incentive for electric vehicles that we were touting. We talked about all of these different aspects, how if you're not spending your money on fuel, you can spend it on your community. If you're getting these federal tax credit that brings money into the economy and the local economy, money that's spent on gasoline, that goes typically out of state. Money that's spent on electricity goes to your local utility, and and then the environmental reasons, and here are the health reasons for all of your community around you. I just thought this was a really great aspect of electric vehicles that is not mentioned. It's not one of the headline ones. I mean, it's usually zero emission, low fuel price, but this is an important aspect I wanted to bring up.
Exactly, and that just makes complete sense because of those issues. Like it's something that is overlooked a lot of the time, but it is certainly part of the overall picture. Something like this. I know many people may not, as you mentioned, that may not be the first thing they arrive upon, but this is another benefit of electric vehicles, and actually for your community as a whole.
Right.
You know, not only for you driving the vehicle, but everyone else that's in your neighborhood, near your home, near your city. It's the more and more of these vehicles on the road, the better it makes for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think about that when I pull up behind a diesel. I'm like, I'm behind him breathing his fumes. The car behind me's not getting anything from me. I'd rather be following an EV than driving one.
I had to go to the bank today, and there was a mid-90s heavy-duty diesel, and big old cloud of smoke. Huge. It lasted like a whole light cycle. And then when I went to go make the left through the light, it was still there. I mean, if there were a cop nearby, they would have got him for modifying his system and causing a hazard, because you could not see. It was thicker than fog.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I often think of that when there's a motorcycle behind me, because they don't even have a car filtration system between them and what's in front of them. It must be really nice being behind an EV as opposed to something that's blowing carbon dioxide right at them.
No noise, no fumes in your face.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not spitting out hot stuff behind it.
That's right. That's right.
Some marathons have lead vehicles, and those should all be EVs nowadays.
I'm surprised they're still like old Volkswagen diesels. It's like, come on, guys.
That makes no sense. Yeah, a lot of restaurants are doing curbside pickup now. And just this week, I was picking up some food, and there was a diesel just sitting there idling. And I'm like, it's not freezing out. You don't need your heater. Why don't you turn it off? Oh, because the glow plugs take 3 seconds to warm up. So you just leave it idling for minutes while waiting for your food. And the rest of us have to breathe this crap. Come on. It's so dumb.
So I was grateful for the bioweapon filter.
Yes, exactly that. I got in, took off my mask, turned on bioweapon defense mode, and drove off.
It's funny you guys should mention that. I just saw a commercial, was it last week, that Ford has announced in Europe that they've got a HEPA filter that they're starting to put in all vehicles. So they have a HEPA filter that they've developed for existing vehicles. So that might be just catching on with other automobile manufacturers, which is great for people that own them.
I was going to ask if it was bigger than a house filter, but
it was definitely not as big as the Tesla filter, because obviously they make them fit their current cars, so they're probably not near as effective as well. But I guess every little bit helps with particulates in the air. So you'd rather have something than nothing, I would imagine.
The next question is, if you have a budget Ford, the ones where they pinched all the pennies, will that wear out the fan having to put through that extra material?
Does the fan have to run 3 times the speed to get any kind of breeze coming out of the air vents?
Well, and will the load make it go out faster?
And the dealerships will love that, because then they get more parts to replace.
Hey, exactly.
You got the new filter, here's the new fan to go with
motors, people. Absolutely.
Oh
my goodness. I digress. We got a couple space stories, of course. We'll get to the one that's really interesting here, and we'll see if we can get the video rolling here. And this, of course, is a Starship test that happened. And here we go. And we'll see if we can expand it. There we go. So here it is, Starship being a test. And the people that were watching this started to notice a plume of white pouring out of the base of the unit, which was concerning. And they were saying, hey, I've never seen that before during a test. Wondering if a hose popped out or what's going on with this. And you'll notice that this ends in not too good for SN4, which is the code name for this particular unit.
As soon as it hit the flare.
Yeah. Obviously, there was something flammable in that particular.
Where'd it go?
That's right. So that was quite a surprise.
Yeah.
That.
So Elon told us what it was.
Oh, good.
So
yes.
so the what we thought first was oxygen, and then as the oxygen burnt up and the explosion did its work on the structure, then the methane tank came down into the fireball, and then it exploded too.
Yeah. And as Second City Television used to quote, it blowed up real good.
Yeah.
There was nothing left on that particular SN4, that iteration. Now you noticed, of course, that this is just a test vehicle. This is something that they are using to test and iterate again and test again. There's no top on it. This obviously wasn't going to be something that was going to be flying. This was a static fire and a static fill, and they ran into this particular problem. And it kind of, what's interesting is Elon's quote was that if you don't fail, you're not pushing hard enough.
Right. Because imagine if they had gone now 20 rockets. This has never happened, and now they've got people on board. Whew.
Yeah, well, that
bad.
certainly is something that you would never want to get to, where it's failing in a critical situation.
Well, it wasn't the rocket itself; it was the quick connect. And so, I mean, if say you'd had a launch aboard, and then they decide, okay, the weather's good, they refill it, or they go to refill it, and then at that point, that could be what do you say, 200 people, 100 people per flight?
It could be 200, yeah.
Yeah. So the good thing is now they won't fail that way the next time.
Right. Yeah, that's what these tests are for. You iterate. That's what agile development is. Is you do things like this. You find out where they fail. You learn from it, and the best product comes from lots and lots of failures, because then you know what not to do. And if you tried to make the perfect plan up front and then just spent years on that plan and then build it, there are going to be things you could not have predicted. And the best way to get a great result is to iterate, find the failures, fix the failures, and keep going. That's the best way to get a really good product in the end.
And really, that is what enabled SpaceX to get to the point where they are today with Crew Dragon launch that we're going to get into next, as well as the supply missions that they were able to fulfill, 20 or 19 such missions already under their belt. So, and of course, NASA and others would tell you that when they gave SpaceX the first, I guess, contract to get into resupplying the space station, a lot of people believed they were not going to get there. Like there were many that believed that they were too young, they weren't experienced enough in the aerospace industry to be able to be successful in their contract. And a lot of people had them failing because of exactly the reason that they rush to the marketplace. They try to put something in place that works. They learn from it. They go back and iterate. They come back again. And they're able to do that a number of times, being an agile company. And that's their advantage. That's exactly how they were able to get to the point where they are today. And that iteration and that speed is what has really helped SpaceX establish itself in the industry to this point, would be my assertion.
Right, but every one of those failures that's very public, and you see iteration after iteration. Oh, this failed, that failed, that failed. You can see how the Tesla Q types were going to be like, or the haters would say, no, they're obviously just failure after failure. Yeah. And without seeing the value of the real value there is learning from the failures, not the failure itself, of course.
Exactly. Standing on the shoulders of the successful things and being able to push the product further and further as you've been able to achieve some of those goals and build upon them. Absolutely. Well, now on to the next successful mission. This time was, of course, with the launch of Crew Dragon that happened on Saturday afternoon. And we've got a couple of photos here to share. So there we've got Bob and Doug heading out from the NASA quarters after their final saying goodbye to their family and friends, about to load up into the Model X NASA mobile and head off to the actual launch pad. So again, some photo opportunities. And as mentioned on Wednesday, when we talked about this particular, they both got in the same vehicle, even though there were two of them. And the portable packs that the astronauts usually carry, I saw that this time they were loaded in the back of the X. Yeah. And as the astronauts sat down in their seats, the crew members were able to grab the hose from behind and plug it into their suits. So those little vacuum packs, you can see the actual line right here. So it's in the back somewhere.
I'm sure those suits get warm, and having some nice cool air blowing in there is probably a good thing.
Want the air conditioning running for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then off they went to head out to the actual runway with about 2 hours, a little bit more than 2 hours on the countdown clock. And of course, as they did go out, they got loaded in the vehicle. And did you guys notice the SpaceX ninjas that helped them out?
Yes.
Yes. Thing 1, thing 5, thing 15.
Yeah, exactly. Those people were assigned numbers, and actually, they were a few of them were actually in the crew quarters, helping with the suit fitting, testing them in the seats that are modeled on the actual Crew Dragon before they left in the cars. But when they got to the actual pad, those same black suited SpaceX employees, some of them had a bit of a helmet on. I don't think it was a hard helmet. It looked like it was material. but it was covering their hair and just leaving kind of a square for their face to stick out of. But they really look like, what reminded me was kind of the knights from Monty Python.
Yes.
Is what it reminded me, with those kind of squarish helmets.
I bet that was not a coincidence.
I wonder, because Elon certainly likes Monty Python.
The knights who say knee.
Yeah, exactly. The knights that say knee. And then they helped the astronauts into the capsule. They locked up the capsule, and then the capsule with the door. And then, of course, there was a procedure where they pressure tested the vehicle with the door shut. And then it went down to countdown, and of course we had a successful launch. We had a successful recovery of the first stage, and Bob and Doug were shot off into orbit, into the proper orbit. And then about a day later, a little bit less, I think it was 19 hours, they did rendezvous with the ISS, and they successfully docked. And again, another pressure test had to happen. With them attached to the ISS, they were in that vehicle for 2 hours before they were let into the actual ISS through the few hatches between the ISS and the Crew Dragon. But again, they're testing things, making sure that everything is fine before they were to open it up. But and what was really cool was that Bob and Doug actually gave us a little bit of a tour of the Dragon crew and all the different areas that they've got storage, what they of course were where they're able to move, where they had been able to eat, and showed the camera view of outside the seats, away from the flat screens, what's below, and that was very cool to see.
Yeah, and they had a little dragon floating around.
That's right. That's a dinosaur. Yeah, exactly. One of the children of Bob and Doug had they agreed that they would take this into orbit with them.
Oh, that's what I thought it might be.
And they said they were going to reunite it with Earthy, which of course is the other stuffed plush that went up with Ripley, the mannequin, in Demo 1. So apparently they're going to bring both of them back, from what I heard from the news conference. So another thing that was interesting was certainly there's a lot of celebrating going on. People were really excited that they were able to get this done successfully. Now they can't completely celebrate because of course they have to bring them back safe. That's the last part of the mission. They've got to push it back into orbit, drop down into Earth's atmosphere, release the chutes, and land successfully in the ocean. So it's not over yet, and they could be, from what I understand, in orbit somewhere between 2.5, 3 months possibly. It's not locked down as to when the mission ends. They are, of course, watching a number of different factors, but one of the constraints apparently is the actual solar panels that are on the outside of Crew Dragon. They have a shelf life, apparently, this particular ones that they've got on it, and that they want it, they're only good for 120 days or something along that line. So that's one of the timelines that they have. But of course, Bob and Doug are performing things at the ISS, and they've got different duties that they need to perform along with experiments and other things before they head home. But they're keeping the actual departure loose based on what NASA wants to do.
Yeah, I heard one of the experiments is for potentially 3D printing organs in space. That was just like that in microgravity. There's a lot more you can do without the structures collapsing, and it would be really cool if that turns into something that helps make life better for all of us down here under normal gravity.
Absolutely. But yeah, it was really special though. Just watching it was I watched the whole thing, and I was just enthralled with it. I don't remember seeing the actual Apollos back in '69. I don't remember any of that. I did see some of it in like 73, the last mission. I remember a little bit of it, but it was really fun to watch, and just you were rooting for them the whole way, and it was a great feeling to see it being pulled off successfully.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to skip the next story and go to Casey's story about a Model 3 in Taiwan. Casey, tell us about that.
Have you got the visual?
Let me grab the visual.
So one of our regular sources of news suggested that this visual you're going to see was caused while the vehicle was on autopilot with auto steer. But one of the commenters suggested that the translation that they used was incorrect, and that this vehicle didn't have anything but regular cruise control turned on. And is that the video you got there, Mark?
I don't have the video. I just have the photo. Yeah.
So this Model 3 went through the roof of this truck that was overturned, and my suggestion was that well, some people are saying it didn't break at all. Some people think that it braked on one side of the car, which the emergency braking system doesn't typically do. So they're thinking that it hit debris on the road. And my thoughts are, after we see the car pull out of the truck, it's got something kind of smushy like ice cream or condiments or who knows what was on there. I didn't care to look in. It looked like ketchup.
We don't know what was in the delivery van. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like ketchup and mayonnaise or chocolate ice cream to my eye. And if it's not those, I don't want to know. But my thoughts are that since the roof of these trucks are usually pretty lightweight, so that you can have more cargo capacity, it likely was transparent to the radar. And since the top of the roof is white, and Teslas have had trouble with
stationary objects
that are white, they look like the sky during either fog or just a kind of hazy day. And another thing to keep in mind is that the radar has a limitation. It's I want to say 50 miles an hour differential. So if he's doing 60 miles an hour,
yeah, he was doing 110 kilometers, which would be about 65 miles an hour.
570, yeah. So and the truck is doing 0. That's obviously greater than 50. So if that's the case, then it.
But you'll notice that there is a gentleman standing in the fast lane. I'm imagining that this particular gentleman is the person that owns the truck, and he was waving at the Model 3 as it went by him. And as soon as the Model 3 got by him, there was this puff of white smoke that you do see in the photo.
Yeah.
So again, is that braking? Is that sand or gravel or maybe part of the load? We don't know. We don't know what it is, but this Model 3 proceeded and continuing in its lane and actually went through the roof of the truck and actually pushed the truck forward with the force that it went into the truck with.
Yes.
But was also interesting to find out is that the occupant of the Model 3 walked away without a scratch. He stepped out of the car on his own. So certainly the crumple zone in the car helped, as we all know, the safety feature of the model or any Tesla. Those crumple zones help the occupant, and it helped this particular occupant as well.
And another thing that led me to say that it was a soft load was that or squishy load, I should say, was that the airbags didn't even deploy. So that meant that the forces on the car were soft enough that they did not necessitate exploding the airbag canisters. And on both translations, the driver admits that he saw it at the very last moment and slammed on the brakes.
So what was this driver doing?
Yeah,
not
that's a very good question.
This driver was not paying attention.
Right. So if he was on just cruise control, like the second translation says, that is, I mean, maybe he looked down for way too long. But if he was on autopilot, like the first translation suggests, then he was not using it correctly. And
I would say regardless whether he was just on cruise control or whether he was in autopilot, he was not using them correctly.
Yes, both of them are not correct.
Because
Right.
you need to pay complete attention. Autopilot is not an excuse to put your feet up and close your eyes. That is something that is a complete misconception. The vehicle is not full self-drive at this point. And it hasn't been announced it is either. So you are in control of the vehicle. You're using an assistance package to the driver. That's all you're using. And you have to be in complete control and be complete aware of your surroundings. This person, based on either that smoke being braking or how fast it approached this vehicle laying on its side, indicated that this driver was not paying attention either way.
Yeah, and even when they passed the truck driver, almost hit him, and I'm sure the guy was yelling, "Hey, look out!" or whatever, and still the driver continued forward. It didn't look like they slowed down at all until like the last couple meters. So it's I don't know. They just really weren't paying attention at all. They were oblivious.
Yeah. So let this be a lesson to anyone that owns a vehicle, owns a Tesla. You need to be in control at all points. This is not an autonomous vehicle. It even though it is called autopilot, read the instructions, for goodness sakes. You're not supposed to completely ignore what's going on and do your own thing when you're in autopilot. And again, we don't know if it was in autopilot or not in this particular case, but it doesn't matter. You need to be in control of your vehicle and be aware of your environment at all times.
Yep, because these cars obviously are going to continue to run into trucks for a little while longer if you let them do their thing. So,
and we did report on some other problems that Tesla had a long time ago, when they hit the back of a fire truck that was in the fast lane, parked on a freeway, and partially into the fast lane. So there has been some of that. Again, those things may be completely solved, but this type of thing, once we figure out if it was in autopilot or not, based on the Taiwanese to English translation, we're not sure. But certainly we will keep our eye on it and report once we hear more information on this particular case.
Yeah, learn a lesson from this guy and don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
One thing we know for sure is that if the car had a successful upload after the collision, I bet you there's overturned backwards trucks with the roofs facing up in the dojo now.
Yes, this will definitely be added to the test suite.
Yeah,
exactly. Another news item: fire, which of course is not a good thing with any car. Certainly, any car can be in trouble if you've got a fire, but this particular Model S caught fire. It's suspected as an arson fire. It's suspected that someone smashed the back window and threw some sort of accelerant through the window and caught the car on fire. But what I wanted to impress upon is that this particular Model S, the battery is completely intact. So the battery, even though the fire raged enough to actually burn the car unrecognizable, you can even see the tires are burnt off the back end of the car. This particular Model S battery system was able to stay intact and not catch on fire. None of the batteries in the pack actually caught on fire, even though the fire was raging just above them. So this is good news. Anytime that you can have components in the car that can retard a fire, stop it from spreading, certainly is a plus. And that's why we wanted to bring out this particular instance, was that this battery stayed intact even under the extreme conditions of fire.
So what's that next to the Model S and in front? Well, there's a Prius there too.
You mean in front of the Model S or
in front of the Model S? In front of the Model S is a Prius that appears to be only partially burnt out. I don't know. Well, yeah, only part of the Model S is burnt out too, and then the one beside the Model S is also thoroughly charred.
And this one got charred that was to the right of it.
Yeah. I hope whoever did this gets caught, because I know you said, hey, it's good news. I don't think the person who owns the car feels
No,
that way.
you're right. They're probably gritting their teeth if they were watching this. It's not good news for them, but it's good news overall for a safety feature.
Yes.
Right, there you go. The safety feature worked. That's the good news.
Yeah.
Hopefully this person was thoroughly insured, didn't have a unicorn car, and will be getting themselves a brand new Model S or Model 3 or
the
something.
situation? Like, was it stored somewhere, or what? Where was it when this happened?
It was stored. So this was a storage area. The car hadn't been used in a while, so we're not sure as to the circumstance beyond that.
Okay.
I'm sure my subscription bills might want it. I think it's too gone for Rich.
Next is a story about some cold weather testing. Now, remember, we talked about this a little bit previously, where we spotted or actually some of our viewers spotted the Tesla Semi heading north from Washington State up through British Columbia and ultimately Alaska. And what we found out from a video from recently from it's Zach of Jerry Rigs Everything. Zach had shown us that he was invited by Tesla to come up to the cold weather testing area for Tesla and do some actual tests with the Tesla crew on the Model Y. And this was one of the days that they were doing some filming. Actually, they were doing filming with the hatch open, filming the other Model Y. So as they were zipping through the snow, the vortex of snow would blow up and get into the back of the car where Zach was actually doing the filming. So that's why he's all snowy in this particular photo. But they had a couple of Model Ys to do some testing and for Tesla to show how the new Model Y would perform in sub temperatures. And what was kind of cool, besides the scenery that the video had, wonderful looking scenery. Cinematography was great. It was almost movie-like as they're going through the wilderness of Alaska. But there's this shot where they showed the Tesla Semi in the side view mirror. So Zach didn't talk about the Semi, just talked about the Ys. But it was interesting that the Semi that we had seen reported heading up to Alaska was at this cold weather testing area that Tesla has mapped out, where they're actually testing vehicles. And Zach took the vehicle on some steep climbs where they have an ice pad as part of it and asphalt for the other part of it, showing how the traction control kicks in and the computer makes changes based on if the tire's slipping or not and where to apply the power, which was interesting to see. And then another thing that they showed exclusively, which was interesting to me being a Canadian, is that they've got a way now that the door handles, if frozen, you can now push on either end of the door handle to crack the ice or break it open. Because obviously you know that with the door handles on a Model 3 currently and Y, that you're pushing at the fat end so that the other end comes out and you can pull open the door. Well, if that thin end is encased in ice, you can't really push the fat end in to release that skinny end. But now you have the ability to push at the skinny end and it cracks the ice and will allow you to open the door. And Patrick asked me if I had a lot of problems with this during the last winter, and I said, well, honestly, no. I have a garage, and that's where the car stays most of the time. But there was the odd circumstance where you would be able to use something like this. And certainly anyone that keeps their car out in the cold is not in a garage. This is going to be a big win. And hopefully the technology that the Y has, they'll move that to the 3s going forward. Which I'm sure would be the logical thing to do.
Yeah, that door handle retrofit will be pretty popular up north, I think.
Exactly. So it was a very interesting video. We have the link in the notes. If you have a few minutes, I would definitely check out just for the cinematography. It was fun to watch, but seeing the Ys being put through their paces was interesting as well. What did you guys think of that video?
I liked it. I regularly watch his channel. He does a lot of cool stuff. It's not all Tesla related. There was one fascinating. They were installing an elevator in their home and just how to do that. It was just really cool. Yeah, I like that channel.
Yeah, and then a really big accessible, a really big accessible garden. too many adjectives. So yeah, just accessible is all you need. And then another thing he likes to do is just unlike his buddy from the What's Inside channel, where they break stuff open indiscriminately, usually as destructively as possible, he tends to open stuff so that you can put it back together again.
Probably the better way to do things.
That's the way I like to see.
I would say. Well, speaking of ice, Casey's got a story for us about a different type of ice.
Whole nother variety of blizzard. You got a photo for us?
Let's see if we got that photo. I did have it. Of course, now it's not at my fingertips.
Of course it does.
Of course it is not there. Oh, here it is. Got it.
So while you're pulling it up, let me lead into this. The Las Vegas Supercharger has some Gen 3 Superchargers, and I'm not sure if they replaced all the Gen 2s yet or not, but it's got an access arm. So when you pull up to the Supercharger and you want to get in, you click on your touchscreen and it will tell you the code. However, with the pandemic, the arm to the security gate was removed. And we're not sure if Tesla did that or if the property holder did that. And yeah, people just don't care. Look at this.
Yeah, we've got a huge icing that's going on, and somebody in social media called it a blizzard.
Yeah. So much icing, it's a blizzard. Yeah.
At least some of them backed in, but I mean, this is not really quite acceptable. This is an active fuel station.
Those are not Teslas.
Yeah, we had posted this picture earlier in the week on our Twitter feed at the Tesla Life. Certainly follow along if you'd like to see stories throughout the week. But what was interesting is that some of the viewers of the Twitter feed, they actually reached out to the High Roller parking lot owner, because this is at the base of that Ferris wheel on the Las Vegas Strip, and had complained about this picture. And they got back to the complainer and indicated that, yes, indeed, there were a number of cars there that shouldn't be there, but these were employees that were parking out of the sun as the casinos were closed. And they always said, we guaranteed that there were a number of spots available for charging cars. So they also indicated that things were going to start to get back to normal at the end of this week, beginning of next. Because the casinos now are starting to ramp up into getting operations running again and accepting hotel guests. So this is going to change shortly. Again, we don't know why the gate was taken off, because this, of course, was something you would get a code in your Tesla that you had to type into the keypad in order for the gate to open. But with the gate gone, as Casey had said, man, people just take advantage. They just grab whatever they can.
Yeah, that's too bad. And this is a perfect example of how in a world of COVID, we're going to have to rethink things. So a keypad that everybody who comes in is touching is probably not a good idea. So if the car, if it can detect enough to send the car the code, well, why not just open the gate instead when the car pulls up? So some things like this
even better with that. Even better with that is assuming, well, I think this lot does have level 2 chargers, but there's a couple of them that don't have level 2 chargers. So if the car pulls up and it's supercharging disabled, don't let it in.
Right.
Yeah, that's another another thing.
Unless it's got a restroom facility, then it's kind of like, I own a Tesla, let me go to the bathroom at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And last but not least, there was an update from Giga Berlin that just happened today. Apparently, this photo is showing the first concrete pad that's beginning to be poured at Giga Berlin.
Excellent.
So not sure what this little square is for. It looks pretty insignificant based on the size of what's going on. But this little square apparently is the first pad of concrete that's been poured in Berlin. So we're hoping to see a lot more activity as time goes along. And notice where the pad has been poured, that actual darker square, below it, the light gray area, that's all compacted gravel of some sort. So they've been bringing in that gravel by rail car, dumping it out of the cars, and then transporting it to make roads and larger pad areas, as this one particularly is. So I'm kind of interested to see how this all fits together as hopefully the steel and I-beams start to show up next. We'll be watching.
It makes sense before you pour tons of concrete to do a test pad and just make sure everything's doing what you think it's supposed to.
Really? They don't just haphazardly just jump around the construction site? Yeah, you're probably right. Well, with that, that brings us to the end of the news cycle today, this week. We certainly thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel right now. Give us a thumbs up. And help us out. That gets us in front of more YouTube eyes and helps the channel grow. It doesn't cost you anything, and we would really appreciate it. Through the week, you can follow us at The Tesla Life on our Twitter feed. You can follow us, The Tesla Life #1, on our Facebook page, which Patrick thankfully populates for us, and we appreciate that, Patrick. And also... I guess that's about it. So who do we got for some shout-outs? Patrick, any shout-outs from you this week?
Sure. I'm with the Oregon Electric Vehicle Association. You can find us at OEVA, and that covers all plug-in types of vehicles. And then if you are a Tesla owner, you might also want to check out and a lot of regions have Tesla owners clubs. And you can find a list of those on Tesla's website, see if there's one in your area. And if you have questions about, on one of the lists today, someone said, I didn't know the third row of the Model X had a USB port. It's right there in the middle, and I've had this car for 2 years, and I didn't know it was there. And so, yeah, just little things like that you could learn by being in these clubs. So check it out.
That's right. Learn from others. That's the best way to do it. Mr. Green, any shout-outs from you today?
Yeah, I've got my YouTube channel. It's getting ever so closer to that 1,000 subscribers. I could really use some help. And whenever this update comes out, I'll put that in there. And I went out to a club meeting with the EV Hybrid NOR group, and it's still sitting right here in the camera. So at some point, I'll get it out of the camera and make a video about it for you guys.
Very good. We look forward to that.
Yeah.
We would like to thank Lee. I'm sorry.
That's at youtube.com/KCGreen, KACEYGREN. And yes, thank you, Lee Moon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moon, for your music that we use on the show. And with that, we'll bid you a goodbye, and check us out next week and find out what is going on in the Tesla life.
Stay charged. Stay safe.
Have a great week, everyone.